It's hard to remember a time before Yamamoto's bankai these days. Even before the reveal of Zanka no Tachi though, Yamamoto was a truly monstrous character. A paragon of power to be feared throughout the Bleach universe. And while I think Zanka no Tachi has understandably taken over the bulk of discourse surrounding the former head captain nowadays, the truth is that the crux of Yamamoto's strength was shown in full long before his fated battle with Royd Lloyd in the first Quincy invasion. Kubo's always handled Yamamoto in an interesting way, creating a character so immensely strong that other characters have to formulate contrived methods of circumventing actually having to go toe-to-toe with him in a fair fight is kind of fascinating to me. And in today's video, I want to take a look at one such example of that happening, and the refreshing outcome resulting from the path Kubo chose to go down. In the latest episode of Bleach the Best Scenes, we're going to travel back to the Arrancar Arc to the surprise reveal of Wonderweiss's true purpose, and when Kubo robbed Yamamoto of his greatest weapon, only to hand him another one immediately after, from a place we perhaps didn't expect. As a writer, Kubo flipped the script on its head when it came to Yamamoto and this moment, upending our expectations as readers and delivering an incredible statement at the same time. Shigekuni Genryusai Yamamoto is unstoppable, and all would do well to remember it. Let's dive in. Kubo has always played a dangerous game where Yamamoto is concerned. As a writer, he's had to tread a proverbial tightrope when it comes to the delicate balance that is portraying a Shinigami as divine and as all-powerful as Yamamoto. At what point, as a writer, do you lift the lid on a character like this and at last let him loose on a world that's not really capable of holding him back once you do so? Were I in Kubo's shoes, I would be afraid of letting the cat out of the bag too early, so to speak. You only really get one chance with a character of Yamamoto's caliber after all. His entire being is one huge impact statement, and that impact won't be quite the same a second time round. For lack of a better phrase, once you let this genie out of the bottle, there's not really any putting him back. And so, for a very long time, the true extent of Yamamoto's strength went completely unknown. The head captain releases his Zanpakutō, the mighty, all-consuming blade of fire Ryujin Jaka, for the first time as he confronts his two former students, Kyoraku and Ukitake, during the climax of the Soul Society arc. And while we get a pretty good idea of what it can do, thanks to a combination of Kubo's incredible artwork and an ominous narration by Ukitake regarding Ryujin Jaka's near-mythical status, we don't actually see it in action. Sure, the flames billow outwards almost endlessly, but Yamamoto barely so much as actually swings it before we cut away, and then before the battle is abruptly ended. The Soul Society arc provided the perfect jumping off point for Yamamoto then, in the same way it does for Kyoraku and Ukitake. Just a tiny snippet of their power before Kubo closed up the curtain once more. The difference here is that with Kyoraku and Ukitake, we quite literally only get the design and the name of the Shikai, as opposed to an understanding of what it's really all about. And Kubo kept Yamamoto on a tight leash ever since, only revealing the head captain's true power in fragments, glimpses here and there that do little more than tease what he's really capable of. When the Battle of the Fake Karakura Town begins, Kubo treats us to an opening salvo from the ancient Shinigami. Yamamoto releases his Shikai once again for the first time in over 150 chapters, the mere act of doing so garnering shocked reactions from several characters, including the powerful top 3 Espada. Against Ion, Yamamoto's sword is barely seen. We, the reader, can hardly catch sight of it as he unsheaths it with a twirl, splitting the beast in two with Nadagiri, before incinerating the Chimera with one final definitive slash. and then obliterating the Tre Bestia in a similarly effortless fashion. A single arching motion, again moving so fast that we can barely register it. When Yamamoto steps up to the plate, it is for but a brief second and barely ever more. After all, that's all he needs. And so, fans were always on tenterhooks whenever Yamamoto was around. When would we at last get to see the head captain going all out? Kubo must have been saving it for something big, and as a potential confrontation with Aizen loomed over the horizon, the time seemed to be nigh to at last see the fruits of Kubo's many teases. After all, in the Arrancar Arc, it doesn't get any bigger than that. With the Gotei 13 dropping like flies, at long last, Yamamoto stepped into the fray in what appeared to be a serious way, primed to use everything at his disposal. An enormous pillar of flame explodes onto the scene to signal his appearance, almost engulfing Ichigo as the head captain emerges from the centre of the tempest. After a short back and forth with Aizen, Yamamoto seemingly captures the elusive villain and prepares to quite literally unleash hell on Earth. It's no coincidence that Enetsu Jigoku is perhaps the craziest ability we have seen in Bleach up until this point, bar none. Though in retrospect, I still don't really know why Yamamoto doesn't just activate Bankai right here and now with Aizen in his grasp. Regardless, this is the moment. Yamamoto is about to go all out in a way he simply hasn't done before, using the very landscape of Karakura Town itself. Right down at the bottom of that double-page spread there for scale, we can see that even in Shikai, Yamamoto is capable of conjuring an ability so massive, so all-encompassing and so final, that he's willing to risk, nay, even potentially offer up the lives of much of the Gotei 13, himself included, to pull it off. As Yamamoto prepares to detonate Enetsu Jigoku, we've reached the apex of Kubo's teasing, and then something unexpected happens. From behind the head captain, Wonderweiss appears out of nowhere, having apparently defeated Kensei off-screen. Except now he's transformed, his Resurrection activated perhaps involuntarily at the moment Yamamoto released his Shikai. Yamamoto spins sharply, his blade coated in flame, but the twisted form of Wonderweiss simply grabs the sword in his stretched fingers before sending Yamamoto flying with a punch to the face. The flames of Ryujin Jaka vanishing into thin air. Yes, at the moment of Yamamoto's awakening, when we were at last going to see what Ryujin Jaka was truly capable of, it was snatched away once again, in a manner that feels purposefully final. Yamamoto's Zanpakutō has been sealed, whatever that really means here, by an Arrancar whose form was modified to deal with Ryujin Jaka specifically. As we find out later, Wonderweiss is quite literally drawing all of Ryujin Jaka's flame into himself, which is quite interesting. With his Shikai unavailable and his sword now a useless hunk of metal, it seems like Yamamoto is in real trouble. Even Aizen seems to think so, smugly noting that by focusing on shutting down only a single aspect of an enemy, even the strongest can be brought to their knees. It looks like we've been robbed of the extent of Yamamoto's power once again. Except this time that's not quite the case. Kubo flips the script by simply letting Yamamoto duke it out with his bare hands instead. Completely unshackled now, the head captain proceeds to rip Wonderweiss apart with raw physical might. No tricks, just pure power. Kubo took away Yamamoto's favourite toy, yes, but in doing so, he simply opened up another avenue to display what the Shinigami is really capable of. As Wonderweiss rushes towards him, Yamamoto cracks the Arrancar in the chest with his curled up outstretched fist, sending Wonderweiss barreling backwards, totally gouging out a chunk of his torso in the process. I remember thinking back in the day that these were Wonderweiss's guts hanging out after Yamamoto's attack, but of course it's not so gruesome. He's using high-speed regeneration to restore his form. It's at this point that it feels like Kubo has a message to deliver, not just for Aizen, but for any doubters among the readership as well. As Yamamoto himself says with a paralysing glare, why do you think he's held the position of head captain for 1,000 years? It's simple. No Shinigami stronger than him has been born since. And the imagery is painfully clear too. A single punch from Yamamoto was enough to almost completely shatter Wonderweiss's entire body. And as Wonderweiss continues to relentlessly attack Yamamoto, flinging strikes and punches at the head captain with a wild speed, yet no finesse or strategy whatsoever, we see Yamamoto doing the total opposite, ducking and weaving, moving in and out of the way, picking his moments perfectly. With a tangible heft, Yamamoto is capable of tearing Wonderweiss's arms off like they're made of paper, ripping an Espada-class Arrancar apart before our very eyes over the course of a single chapter. Finally, as Yamamoto decides to put an end to their pitiful battle, he slams both fists into Wonderweiss's gut, using a Hakuda ability called Sokots, essentially the doubled-up version of his first punch that nearly wiped out Wonderweiss, only this time obliterating the Arrancar as though he were made of glass. It's not entirely clear how this move works. Previously, Wonderweiss seemed to at least be made up of flesh and blood, but now his body crumbles away into nothingness, cracks appearing on his skin like the most fragile of porcelain vases. But again, this is the sheer force of nature on display that is Shigekuni Genryusai Yamamoto. Kubo succeeds in pulling one over us. He builds to a showcase of Ryujin Jaka before quashing it, but then subverts expectations successfully by simply having Yamamoto counter with his bare hands now instead. Aizen, and by extension Kubo, circumvents Yamamoto's power by having Wonderweiss seal his Zanpakutō. But then Kubo doubles down on it anyway, turning the head captain into this unstoppable force, hammering home the message that no matter what you do, no matter what you try, this man isn't going down without a fight. Yamamoto calls Aizen dizzyingly naive on 2 separate occasions, and I can't help but think he means it for us too. And then, of course, as the battle comes to its dramatic end, it is revealed that while Wonderweiss seals Ryujin Jaka to the point where it can produce no more flames from the blade somehow, the flames Yamamoto already produced for Enetsu Jigoku had to go somewhere else. And so, when Wonderweiss's body inflates and explodes with the force of those collected flames, Yamamoto throws himself onto the grenade to protect Karakura Town from destruction. Now, of course, this isn't technically Enetsu Jigoku anymore, the technique itself, just the combined force of all of those flames brought together. But when you remember just how much fire was created for the purpose of Enetsu Jigoku, well, for Yamamoto to tank that and survive to the point where he was still able to use a chantless Hado 96 is testament to his monstrous, immeasurable power, and a showcase as well for his impossible durability, on top of now his Hakuda and Kido skills. Sure, perhaps it was a little disappointing to not see Ryujin Jaka fully unleashed once again. After all, we had no frame of reference for when we would see Yamamoto in action next. Some people even thought he had died after the activation of Ito Kaso. By the time his battle with Wonderweiss comes to an end, it's clear the fake Karakura Town arc as a whole is beginning to wrap up, and so the final battle of the Arrancar arc has closed out with Yamamoto not getting an awful lot to do, and certainly not receiving one big spectacular hurrah that really shows off the head captain's Zanpakutō, which is kind of what everyone wanted. Nowadays, it doesn't feel anywhere near as egregious. We know that Yamamoto will receive said incredible send-off in the future. But looking back, this really is an awesome scene, and a great move by Kubo. It does a lot for Yamamoto's character and his reputation within the world of Bleach to prove that he's not just a one-trick pony, to emphasise that he didn't get to where he is today simply by having a ridiculously powerful Zanpakutō. If that's all he took, then numerous characters could quite easily take up the mantle. That even with Ryujin Jaka by his side, he still strove to be the very best at every Shinigami combat art. And this is of course reinforced again later on when he pulls off the sacrificial Hado 96 Ito Kaso without an incantation. In a way, it's an understated demonstration of everything the head captain can do, and backing him into a corner like this by removing his Zanpakutō was a smart way to justify diving into these other avenues. And so that's why I think this is one of Bleach's best scenes. It successfully flips the script on what we expected from the head captain without undermining him in any way. In fact, if anything, it just reinforces why he was the top dog at the time. Watching Yamamoto dismantle Wonderweiss is awesome, and I maintain that if Yamamoto had landed this massive punch he was aiming at Aizen's face at the start, Aizen's head would have probably exploded like a watermelon. Yamamoto was a true force to be reckoned with, Zanpakutō or not, and it only cemented how much of a different level he was on compared with most. You can see some of the other captains are slowly getting there in several different areas. Byakuya, for example, is excellent with Kido. Kenpachi is an unparalleled master of physical strength. Kyoraku has a totally busted Zanpakutō. But at least at this point in the story, none commanded a full mastery of the entire suite of Shinigami combat arts quite like Yamamoto. Aizen was Yamamoto's closest equal in that regard, and even he didn't measure up without the Hogyoku. It is weird to think, though, that after Enetsu Jigoku, we basically don't see Yamamoto use his Shikai ever again, outside of a few swings here and there in the 1000-Year Blood War arc. Regardless, this is an excellent moment that really stands the test of time as far as I'm concerned, combining great character action with a nice piece of storytelling too, employing a show don't tell mantra that really helps Yamamoto shine. Alright guys, but that's it for this video for the latest iteration of Bleach The Best Scenes, which has laid dormant for quite some time now. It's a bit of a short one this time, but again, I really hope you enjoyed it, and maybe even got some value out of it as well. Do let me know in the comments what you think of Yamamoto, what you think of this scene of him taking down Wonderweiss piece by piece with nothing but his bare hands as a true showcase for the man called the Captain Commander when his Zanpakutō was stolen away from him. I would love to hear all of your thoughts down in the comments below. Thinking about it now, it kind of feels like a weird precursor to the Shinigami losing bankai, and to how characters like Hitsugaya would have to learn to fight without it in order to take down their enemies, though they do a considerably worse job of it than Yamamoto. And as always, I want to end the video by saying a massive thank you and giving a huge shout out to my wonderful supporters over on Patreon. I really do appreciate each and every one of you so very much, and frankly couldn't keep doing this without you. If you really like what I do here on YouTube and you want to support me another step further, even for just a couple of dollars a month, you can do just that by supporting me over on Patreon to get your name in the credits like this and to get every video I release absolutely ad-free. Alright guys, but until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.